The hotel lobby was buzzing with energy. Guests hurried past with their designer bags. The clinking of glasses echoed from the nearby restaurant, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. The millionaire sat in a quiet corner, his eyes scanning through some papers, completely absorbed in his own world. He was a man who had built his fortune from nothing, a self-made billionaire who knew the value of every decision he made. Yet, despite his success, he trusted very few people, always wary of the intentions of others. At the same time, a young waitress moved gracefully between the tables, balancing a tray full of drinks. She had been working at the hotel for a few years now, and her keen eye for detail made her stand out among her colleagues. She knew the regular guests, could anticipate their orders, and often noticed things others overlooked. Today, she had a feeling something unusual was going on. She couldn't explain it, but her instincts told her to pay closer attention. The millionaire was about to meet some international guests from abroad. Among them were a group of Arabs, known for handling high-stakes business deals. The meeting was supposed to be private, with only the millionaire and a few of his closest advisors involved. Yet, somehow, the conversation had spilled into the restaurant area where the waitress was serving tables nearby. She moved quietly, pretending to be busy, but her ears caught snippets of their discussion. The Arabs spoke in a low, calculated tone. They were discussing figures that made the waitress's eyes widen in surprise. $50 million. The word echoed in her mind. She had heard people talk about large sums before, but the way they were speaking about it, almost carelessly, made her stomach turn. Something wasn't right. They were plotting something that could cost the billionaire a fortune, and she was the only one who had heard it. The waitress felt a rush of fear and excitement at the same time. Fear because she knew that getting involved in such matters could be dangerous. Excitement because she realized that she had information that could change everything. She paused, placing a glass on a nearby table, and tried to listen more carefully without being noticed. Every word they spoke seemed to confirm her worst fears. The millionaire, meanwhile, remained unaware of the looming danger. He adjusted his tie, glanced at his watch, and continued reviewing his documents. To him, the dinner was just another routine meeting, another day in the life of high finance. He had no idea that the conversation happening just a few feet away could potentially cost him a massive part of his fortune. The room was full of people, yet the danger was invisible, slipping under the radar of everyone except the waitress. As she moved closer to clear a table, she overheard more details. They were planning to manipulate a deal, ensuring that the millionaire would unknowingly sign a contract that could make him lose $50 million. The words were carefully chosen, the tone casual, as if they were discussing a minor issue rather than a deal worth a fortune. It was shocking to the waitress how easily they spoke about such a serious matter, assuming that no one was listening. Her mind raced. Should she tell someone? Who could she trust? The millionaire was a stranger, someone she served drinks to but didn't know personally. Yet, the thought of staying silent while so much money, and perhaps the reputation of an honest businessman, was at risk made her feel guilty. She had to do something, but she had to be careful. One wrong move and it could backfire. She thought about the people around her, the other waitstaff who were too busy to notice, the guests who were engrossed in their own conversations, and the security personnel who were unaware of what was happening. She was alone in this, but that also meant she could act quickly without interference. Taking a deep breath, she decided that she couldn't ignore what she had heard. She needed to alert the billionaire before it was too late. The waitress finished her shift at the tables near the meeting but didn't leave the area. She kept herself calm, pretending to attend to other guests, while keeping a discreet eye on the group. She noticed that the billionaire occasionally looked up from his papers, glancing around the room, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. She realized that timing would be crucial. She needed to approach him without alarming the others, without drawing attention to the fact that she had overheard sensitive information. As she moved closer to his table under the guise of offering a drink refill, she rehearsed what she would say. She couldn't reveal everything openly, but she had to make him understand the urgency. Her heart pounded, but she kept her composure. She had faced busy, stressful shifts before, but nothing like this. This was a moment that could change the course of events dramatically. The millionaire looked up as she approached, smiling politely. "Can I get you anything else?" he asked, accustomed to the polite attentions of the hotel staff. The waitress hesitated, then leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice to ensure no one else could overhear. "Sir," she said softly, "I think there's something you should know, something very important." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the unusual seriousness in her tone. She quickly explained that she had overheard a conversation that could involve a significant financial risk, carefully avoiding specifics that might alarm the other guests. He listened intently, a frown forming on his face. The papers in front of him were suddenly less important than the words of the waitress standing quietly before him. He asked questions, trying to piece together what she had heard. The waitress, despite feeling nervous, gave him all the details she could remember, emphasizing the urgency and the potential loss. For the first time in the evening, the billionaire paused. He looked around the room, observing the group she had mentioned. Something in their demeanor now seemed suspicious, though earlier he hadn't noticed it. The pieces were starting to fit together, and he realized that the waitress's warning might have just saved him from a catastrophic mistake. The waitress stepped back, allowing him space to process the information. She felt a mix of relief and anxiety. She had done what she could, but now it was up to him to act. Her instincts had told her to intervene, and she hoped that her judgment had been right. She watched as the billionaire quietly signaled his assistant, whispering instructions and making a quick plan. The seriousness of the situation had shifted the atmosphere around the table, and the millionaire's sharp mind was already working to prevent the loss she had feared. Meanwhile, the Arabs continued their conversation, oblivious to the fact that their plan was now at risk of being exposed. The waitress moved away, resuming her duties but keeping a watchful eye. She felt a strange sense of pride mixed with tension, knowing that her attention and courage had made a real difference. It was a reminder that sometimes, even those in positions we least expect, can have a huge impact on critical moments. The night continued, but for the waitress, nothing would feel quite the same. She had stepped into a world of high stakes and million-dollar decisions, and she had done it without hesitation. She had acted not out of ambition or reward, but out of instinct and a sense of responsibility. And in doing so, she had changed the course of the evening, proving that even the smallest voice, when heard, can make an enormous difference. The waitress returned to her usual rounds, but her mind remained focused on what she had just done. The memory of the conversation she overheard played over and over in her head. Every word the group had spoken seemed more significant now, and she knew the situation was far from over. She had alerted the millionaire, but she also understood that the real challenge was only beginning. How he handled the information would determine whether the disaster could be avoided. The millionaire sat in his corner, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. The documents he had been reviewing now lay forgotten. Instead, he focused on the details provided by the waitress. He appreciated her courage and clarity, realizing that she had noticed things that even his most trusted advisors might have missed. He quietly asked his assistant to start discreetly verifying the details of the conversation, making sure that no one in the room could sense the sudden tension that had developed. Meanwhile, the group of Arabs continued their discussion, unaware that their plans were being unraveled. They laughed and joked, confident that the billionaire would sign the agreement without noticing any flaws. Their confidence irritated the millionaire, who had now become fully alert to the potential threat. He reviewed the documents again, matching the figures and clauses to the information the waitress had shared. It became evident that the conversation she overheard was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate attempt to manipulate the deal, and if it had gone through, he would have lost $50 million. The waitress, sensing the urgency, stayed nearby, keeping an eye on the group while serving other tables. Her movements were careful, deliberate, and calm. She did not want to draw attention, but she also needed to remain aware of the unfolding situation. She felt a growing sense of responsibility. This was no longer just a customer service role. She was an invisible observer in a high-stakes game of business and trust. Every small detail mattered, The millionaire's assistant moved quietly, contacting key legal and financial advisors to review the contract and investigate the conversation. Within moments, they began uncovering inconsistencies and irregularities that confirmed the waitress's warning. Her intuition had been correct. The deal, if signed, could have caused irreparable damage, not just financially but also to the reputation of the billionaire. The gravity of the situation started to sink in for everyone involved. In the midst of all this, the Arabs continued their discussion, oblivious to the fact that their plan was now compromised. The waitress noticed subtle signs of their overconfidence. The way they leaned back in their chairs, the casual way they handled documents, and the slight smirks that suggested they assumed victory was guaranteed. She had seen people like this before, and she knew that such arrogance often led to mistakes. Her hope was that their carelessness would give the millionaire an advantage. The billionaire decided to act swiftly but cautiously. He needed to gather more evidence to confront the group without alarming them. The waitress offered to continue observing, and he quietly signaled for her to stay close. She moved naturally among the tables, taking drink orders and clearing dishes, all the while noting every subtle gesture, word, and movement from the group. Her attention to detail became a critical asset. As the evening progressed, the billionaire pieced together the puzzle. Each statement made by the group now fit into a larger scheme. He realized they were planning to exploit a loophole in a complex investment, intending to shift funds without his knowledge. The amount of $50 million was not just money. It represented years of work, careful planning, and the security of countless employees who relied on his decisions. The thought of losing it was unacceptable, and he silently admired the waitress for giving him the chance to prevent it. The waitress felt a mix of anxiety and determination. Every small action mattered. A wrong move could alert the group and ruin the opportunity to stop them. She kept her expressions neutral, maintaining the appearance of a regular server, while her mind raced through every possibility. She considered what she would do if the group noticed her attention. Her training in customer service helped her mask her emotions, but inside, her heartbeat was rapid. The billionaire, understanding the stakes, asked the waitress for more details. He wanted to make sure that nothing had been missed, no subtle hint overlooked. She recounted her observations, noting the tone of voice, the specific numbers mentioned, and even small behaviors that indicated confidence and arrogance. The assistant documented everything, creating a timeline that would later prove invaluable. As the night wore on, the group started to prepare to finalize their plans. They were reviewing documents, discussing signatures, and strategizing the final steps. The waitress, keeping her composure, noticed a small inconsistency, a phrase that didn't match the official contract language. She pointed it out discreetly to the billionaire, who immediately understood its significance. It was a small clue, but it provided the leverage needed to stop the deal before it could be executed. The atmosphere around the millionaire's table became tense. He instructed his team to quietly verify all the information and ensure that the contract could not be signed without thorough review. The Arabs continued their conversation, unaware that their scheme was unraveling. The waitress's role as an observer and communicator had become pivotal. She was no longer just a bystander. She was a key player in preventing a massive financial loss. Throughout the evening, the waitress remained calm and professional. Her actions were guided by instinct, careful observation, and a sense of responsibility. She had never imagined that her job could involve such high stakes, yet she handled it with courage and intelligence. The millionaire, recognizing her contribution, felt a deep sense of gratitude and respect. Her attentiveness had given him the opportunity to act decisively. As the Arabs continued, the billionaire formulated a plan to confront the inconsistencies without causing a scene. He wanted to protect his interests while maintaining diplomacy. The waitress continued to serve tables, ensuring she stayed close enough to monitor the group's actions. Her focus was unwavering, her mind analyzing every detail, every gesture, and every word. Finally, the millionaire's team gathered enough evidence to confirm the potential loss and the strategy being used by the group. The waitress had been right. Her observations were crucial in uncovering the threat. The realization that she had helped prevent such a significant loss filled her with a quiet sense of pride. She had acted not out of ambition, but out of integrity and careful observation, proving that courage and awareness could make a real difference. As the night drew to a close, the billionaire quietly acknowledged the waitress's role. He knew that, without her vigilance, the $50 million could have been gone in an instant. She had acted with intelligence, discretion, and bravery, demonstrating that even those who appear ordinary can have an extraordinary impact. The waitress continued her work, carrying herself with a newfound confidence, knowing that she had played a critical part in a situation far beyond what she had ever imagined. The night continued with a quiet intensity. The millionaire's mind was focused, his thoughts running faster than anyone could see. He knew that the Arabs were experts in handling high-stakes deals, and their confidence made them dangerous. Every move they made was deliberate, calculated, and meant to gain an advantage. Yet now, with the waitress's observations, he had a rare chance to counter their plan. Her courage had opened a window of opportunity that could save him $50 million, and he was determined to make the most of it. The waitress moved among the tables, serving drinks and clearing plates, all while keeping an eye on the group. She noticed subtle changes in their posture and expressions, the way they exchanged glances and whispered to each other. These small details confirmed her suspicion that something was indeed off. She had grown up observing people closely, learning how to read expressions and body language, and tonight those skills were more valuable than ever. The millionaire quietly called over his assistant, sharing the latest observations from the waitress. Together, they pieced together a clearer picture of the scheme. The group planned to manipulate specific clauses in the contract, knowing that the billionaire's trust in routine procedures would make him an easy target. They were counting on his team not noticing the hidden trap. The stakes were enormous, and the room, filled with unaware guests, became the stage for a silent battle of wits. The waitress, understanding the gravity of the situation, felt a mixture of nerves and determination. She had to remain unnoticed, but she also had to keep observing. She discreetly moved closer when possible, pretending to adjust tables or take orders, while paying attention to the subtle cues that might indicate what the group was planning next. Her mind worked quickly, calculating possibilities and trying to anticipate the next move. The millionaire had begun a careful strategy of his own. He instructed his assistant to subtly request additional documentation and clarifications, making it seem like routine questions rather than a probe. He watched the reactions of the group, noting any hesitation or discomfort. The Arabs, confident as they were, did not expect their plan to be challenged in such a subtle and intelligent way. The waitress's information had given him an edge, and he was determined to use it. As the evening progressed, the waitress noticed small inconsistencies in the group's documents and discussions. Numbers didn't match, terms were vaguely defined, and some phrases seemed intentionally misleading. She mentally recorded every detail, ready to pass it along to the millionaire at the right moment. Her attention to detail was meticulous. Even the slightest error could be the clue needed to unravel the scheme. The millionaire, reviewing the information, began to see the full extent of what could have happened. The $50 million was not just a number. It represented years of effort, investments, and the security of many who depended on him. Losing it would have been devastating. He realized that the waitress had done more than just warn him. She had given him the tools to protect everything he had worked for. Her actions were extraordinary, and he silently vowed to acknowledge her bravery. The group of Arabs, still unaware that their plan had been detected, continued their discussion. They laughed and joked, confident in their control of the situation. Their overconfidence was their weakness, and the waitress noticed it immediately. She recognized the signs of arrogance and recklessness, understanding that it could provide an opening for the millionaire to act. Every detail, from the way they handled papers to the subtle smirks exchanged, was a piece of the puzzle. The millionaire decided it was time to gather all the information he needed to prevent the deal from going through. He quietly asked the waitress to continue observing, noting that her insights were invaluable. She moved naturally, serving other guests while keeping a discreet eye on the group. Her presence was barely noticed, yet her role had become crucial. She understood that one wrong move could alert the group and compromise the opportunity to prevent the financial loss. Time passed, and the tension in the room grew, though no one outside the Millionaire's team seemed to notice. The waitress felt a sense of purpose that was unlike anything she had experienced before. She had always taken pride in her work, but tonight, her observation and courage had placed her at the center of a high-stakes situation. Her actions were no longer just about serving guests. They were about integrity, responsibility, and the courage to act when it mattered most. The Millionaire's team began verifying the inconsistencies and preparing a strategy to confront the situation. They worked quietly, carefully, making sure that the Arabs remained unaware. The waitress provided small, crucial details, pointing out errors and inconsistencies that could be used to protect the contract. Her observations were precise, her timing impeccable. Without her, the plan to manipulate the deal could have gone unnoticed until it was too late. As the night drew on, the millionaire formulated a careful approach to address the potential threat. He needed to act decisively yet discreetly, protecting his interests while maintaining professionalism. The waitress continued her role as observer, blending in with the environment while her mind processed every detail. She had become an unseen protector, using her awareness and intelligence to safeguard something far beyond her usual responsibilities. The group of Arabs started to notice small delays and additional questions regarding the contract, but they did not yet suspect that they were being closely monitored. Their confidence remained, but cracks were beginning to show. The millionaire, guided by the waitress's observations, knew how to interpret these subtle signs. Each hesitation, each slight change in tone, indicated that their plan was starting to falter. The waitress, despite the pressure, remained calm and professional. She continued to serve tables, take orders, and clear dishes, all while keeping her focus sharp. Her ability to manage the situation quietly without drawing attention was remarkable. She realized that sometimes, courage was not about confrontation but about careful observation, timely action, and discretion. Her role was critical and she handled it with poise. Finally, the millionaire's team had gathered enough information to confirm the potential financial loss and the exact method being used by the group. The observations from the waitress had been indispensable in piecing together the plan. It became clear that without her vigilance, the deal could have resulted in a loss of $50 million. The realization highlighted the importance of her intuition, courage, and attention to detail. As the evening ended, the millionaire quietly acknowledged the waitress's role in preventing the disaster. He understood that her actions had gone beyond her regular duties. She had stepped into a situation of enormous responsibility, acting with intelligence, discretion, and bravery. Her presence had made the difference between a devastating loss and a controlled, safe resolution. The waitress, unaware of the full extent of her impact at the moment, felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had acted correctly when it mattered most. Her confidence grew as she continued her work, carrying herself with a new sense of purpose. She had been an ordinary waitress, unnoticed in the bustling hotel environment, yet she had played a critical role in a high-stakes financial scenario. Her actions reminded everyone, including herself, that courage, attention to detail, and integrity could have extraordinary consequences, even in the most unexpected circumstances. The night would be remembered not just for the high-profile meeting or the financial stakes, but for the quiet bravery of the waitress who had ensured that the billionaire's fortune and reputation remained secure. The room felt heavier as the night went on. The millionaire's mind worked tirelessly, connecting every piece of information the waitress had shared with the documents in front of him. Each detail she had noticed, every whispered word, every subtle gesture, every numerical inconsistency, had become a crucial thread in a web that revealed the Arabs' plan. What could have been a catastrophic financial loss now had a fighting chance of being avoided, thanks to her careful observation and quick thinking. The waitress moved through the tables with her usual grace, carrying trays of drinks and plates of food, yet her mind remained sharply focused on the group. She noticed small signs of tension among them, subtle enough that an ordinary guest would never detect. One of them shifted nervously in his chair, Another paused slightly before responding to a question. These were tiny, almost imperceptible signals, but to the waitress they spoke volumes. Her instincts told her that the plan was beginning to wobble. The millionaire, having absorbed all the information, decided that immediate action was necessary. He quietly instructed his assistant to prepare for a thorough review of the contract and to ensure that nothing could be signed without careful verification. He wanted to avoid confrontation in front of the group, maintaining an appearance of routine business while secretly dismantling their scheme. He appreciated the waitress's role more than ever. Without her vigilance, he might have been blindsided. Meanwhile, the Arabs continued their discussion, unaware that their carefully laid plans were being carefully monitored. They spoke in tones meant to exude confidence and control, but the slightest hints of hesitation were becoming evident. The waitress noticed it immediately. She had seen similar situations in her own life, moments when people's overconfidence led them to make mistakes. She realized that her continued observation could provide the final piece needed to prevent the billionaire's loss. As she moved closer under the guise of clearing dishes, the waitress heard a snippet of conversation that confirmed her suspicions. The group was attempting to exploit a specific loophole in the contract, hoping the billionaire's team wouldn't notice. She discreetly memorized the key points and passed them along to the millionaire during a moment when she could speak privately. Her timing was perfect. The information allowed him to address the issue before any signatures could be finalized. The millionaire's team began cross-checking every clause and figure, verifying the discrepancies that the waitress had noticed. Her observations were proving invaluable. Each error, no matter how small, was an indication of the broader scheme. He felt a deep respect for her attention to detail and her courage in coming forward. It was rare to find someone so observant and willing to act, especially when the stakes were this high. The Arabs, still oblivious, grew more animated as they believed their plan was progressing smoothly. The waitress observed the subtle arrogance in their body language, the way they leaned back, exchanged knowing glances, and handled documents casually. These were all signs that they felt untouchable. Her keen eye for detail allowed her to predict some of their next moves, information she quietly relayed to the billionaire. The billionaire knew he had to be strategic. A direct confrontation could alert them and complicate matters further. Instead, he used the information provided by the waitress to make calculated inquiries, asking questions that appeared routine but subtly exposed the weaknesses in their plan. Each answer, each reaction was carefully noted, adding to the growing evidence against the scheme. The waitress's observations guided these decisions, making her a silent yet critical part of the strategy. The waitress felt a mixture of anxiety and focus. She was aware of the weight of the situation. It was no longer a simple matter of serving guests. She was part of a high-stakes scenario where every observation could prevent a massive loss. Yet she moved with composure, blending seamlessly into her role as a server. Her ability to act naturally while maintaining sharp awareness was essential to keeping the Arabs unaware of the scrutiny. As the night deepened, the millionaire and his team gathered all the necessary details. They now had enough evidence to identify exactly how the plan was supposed to unfold and how to counter it. The information from the waitress had been instrumental, allowing them to prepare a response that would prevent the $50 million loss without causing public confrontation. Her courage and intelligence had made a significant impact on the situation. The Arabs began preparing to finalize their documents, still confident in their control. But the slight cracks in their confidence were becoming more apparent. The millionaire, guided by the details provided by the waitress, moved decisively. He subtly instructed his team to correct the discrepancies, ensuring that the contract could not be signed in its current state. The group's overconfidence blinded them to the careful and deliberate steps being taken to protect the billionaire's interests. The waitress observed all these developments, quietly noting every reaction and gesture. She remained professional and composed, aware that any sudden movement or expression could alert the group. Her training in observation and discretion was now a vital part of the operation. She had never imagined her job could hold such responsibility, but her actions were proving that courage, attentiveness, and quick thinking could have extraordinary consequences. The millionaire's team worked efficiently and quietly, guided by the insights provided by the waitress. They documented every inconsistency, verified every figure, and prepared to present a corrected version of the contract. The Arabs, still believing they were in control, continued their discussion, unaware that their plan was being dismantled methodically. The room was filled with a quiet tension, a battle of intellects and strategy happening without anyone else noticing. The waitress, sensing that the critical moment was approaching, stayed close but unobtrusive. She knew that her role as an observer was nearly complete, but also recognized the importance of remaining vigilant until the situation was fully resolved. Her attention to detail and intuition had guided the billionaire through a potential disaster, and she was determined to ensure that nothing was overlooked. Finally, with all the evidence in place, the millionaire was ready to act. The contract had been corrected, and the discrepancies exposed. The Arabs, confronted subtly through questions and clarifications, could no longer proceed with their scheme. The situation that could have resulted in a $50 million loss had been averted, thanks in large part to the observations and courage of the waitress. The night concluded with a quiet sense of relief. The billionaire recognized the critical role the waitress had played. Without her vigilance, the plan might have succeeded, and the consequences would have been severe. Her intelligence, discretion, and bravery had made an extraordinary impact. She returned to her normal duties, carrying herself with a sense of quiet pride, knowing that she had helped prevent a disaster and played a pivotal role in a high-stakes situation. The experience left a lasting impression on both the millionaire and the waitress. He had been reminded that valuable insight can come from unexpected places, and she had learned the power of observation, courage, and quick thinking. The night would be remembered not just for the potential financial loss avoided, but for the quiet heroism of the waitress who had stepped up when it mattered most. The night had been long, filled with quiet tension, careful observation, and decisive action. By the time the last guests had left the restaurant and the hotel lobby grew quiet, the millionaire finally allowed himself a moment of relief. The potential disaster had been averted. $50 million, a fortune that could have vanished in an instant, was safe. And at the center of this success was a young waitress whose courage and sharp mind had made all the difference. The waitress had returned to her usual tasks, clearing tables, washing dishes, and attending to the few remaining guests. She moved with calm efficiency, but inside, her heart still raced from the events of the evening. She had been nervous when she first decided to warn the millionaire, unsure of how he would react or if she would even be believed. Yet now, seeing the outcome, a sense of quiet pride settled over her. She had stepped up when it mattered most, and her actions had changed the course of events. The millionaire sat back in his chair, reviewing the documents one last time. His team had confirmed every detail, corrected every inconsistency, and ensured that nothing could be signed without proper verification. He glanced at the waitress, who was wiping down tables nearby, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had not only noticed the danger but had acted with discretion, intelligence, and courage. He realized that her attentiveness had been instrumental in preventing a massive loss and protecting his reputation. He motioned for his assistant and asked quietly to speak with the waitress. When she approached, he looked at her with a seriousness that immediately drew her attention. "Tonight, you did something extraordinary," he said. "Your observation, quick thinking, and courage have prevented a loss that could have been devastating. I want you to know that your actions have not gone unnoticed." The waitress felt a flush of surprise and humility. She had not expected recognition, only hoping that she had done the right thing. The millionaire continued, explaining how critical her information had been. Every small detail she had noticed, every subtle gesture from the group she had observed, had provided insight that his team could use. He explained how the $50 million loss had been avoided and how her role had been central to that success. The waitress listened, feeling both amazed and proud. She had never imagined that her attention to detail and willingness to act could have such a significant impact. The atmosphere in the quiet restaurant shifted from tension to calm satisfaction. The millionaire took a moment to reflect on the evening, realizing that the most valuable insights often come from unexpected places. The waitress, an ordinary employee in the bustling hotel, had been the eyes and ears that made all the difference. It was a lesson in humility and the power of awareness, showing that courage and intelligence could exist in anyone, regardless of their position. The Millionaire's team gathered around, expressing their appreciation for the waitress as well. They recognized that her keen observation and careful reporting had given them the advantage needed to counter the group's plan. She had remained composed under pressure, acting with discretion and focus while the stakes were incredibly high. Her actions had demonstrated not only skill but character, integrity, and bravery. As the evening concluded, the millionaire decided to reward the waitress in a way that reflected her extraordinary contribution. He offered her a significant bonus, recognizing that her actions had far exceeded the expectations of her role. Beyond the financial reward, he promised her continued opportunities for growth, emphasizing that intelligence, courage, and initiative were qualities that would always be valued and supported. The waitress, while grateful for the recognition, felt that the true reward was knowing that she had done the right thing and made a real difference. The following days brought reflection and a quiet sense of pride for the waitress. Colleagues who had been unaware of the situation noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. She carried herself with confidence, not from arrogance, but from the knowledge that her actions had mattered when it truly counted. The experience had taught her the power of careful observation, the importance of integrity, and the courage required to act even when the stakes are high. The millionaire, meanwhile, shared the story with his trusted advisors, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and attention to detail. He reflected on how a single observation, made by someone in a seemingly ordinary position, had saved him from a massive loss. He learned a valuable lesson that night. Talent and insight can come from anyone, and sometimes, the quietest voices are the ones that matter the most. In the weeks that followed, the hotel staff began to view the waitress with newfound respect. She remained humble, continuing her duties with professionalism and care, but her confidence had grown. She knew that she had contributed to something significant, that her actions had prevented a disaster, and that her courage had been recognized at the highest level. It was a reminder that even in ordinary roles, extraordinary impact is possible when one acts with awareness and integrity. The millionaire also made sure that the waitress was formally recognized within the company. He ensured that her story was shared as an example of courage, intelligence, and the difference one person can make. She became an inspiration to others, showing that paying attention, acting responsibly, and having the courage to speak up could have life-changing consequences. Her experience highlighted the importance of noticing the details that others might miss and taking action when it truly matters. The evening that had begun like any other had turned into a pivotal moment for both the millionaire and the waitress. He had been saved from a massive financial loss, and she had discovered the power of her own intuition and courage. The story became a quiet legend in the hotel, a tale of vigilance, intelligence, and bravery that inspired others to pay attention and act when the opportunity arises. Ultimately, the waitress's actions had proven that true courage is not always about confrontation or heroics in the traditional sense. Sometimes it is about being observant, being attentive, and having the presence of mind to act at the right moment. Her role had been pivotal, and the impact of her choices would be remembered not just by the millionaire, but by everyone who learned of the extraordinary events of that night. The millionaire often reflected on that evening, grateful for the unexpected hero who had stepped forward when it mattered most. He realized that no amount of experience or wealth could replace the value of someone who notices, acts, and protects what is important. The waitress had done all of this quietly, without expectation, and with remarkable courage. And in doing so, she had saved not just $50 million, but also demonstrated the extraordinary power of integrity, awareness, and human courage.